There are places on this planet that were never meant for human beings. Everest is one of those places. The distress call lasted 11 seconds. It came through on the base camp frequency just after 4 a.m., cutting through the static like a knife through ice. The voice on the other end was a woman's, barely above a whisper, shaking so hard the words broke apart before they finished. Base camp, this is Victoria Reynolds, Expedition Echo 7. If anyone can hear this, they're all dead. It killed them, one by one, and it's still out there, waiting. Then silence. But this story doesn't begin with that call. It begins 24 hours earlier, 300 meters below the summit, where 4 climbers were doing something that felt, in that crystalline high-altitude morning, like the greatest achievement of their lives. James Calloway was the kind of man who had never learned how to turn back. 12 expeditions, 6 continents, a resume built entirely on refusing to accept the word impossible. He led from the front, always, and his confidence had a way of flowing backward through a rope team like warm blood. When James said they were going to make it, people believed him. Behind him, Robert Chen filmed everything with a chest-mounted camera, grinning behind his oxygen mask. Robert had been born to document. He saw the world in frames, in angles, in moments that would look extraordinary on a screen. This summit was going to be the centerpiece of a film he'd been planning for 3 years. When Daniel looked at the sky and didn't like what he saw, the right response was to listen. And then there was Victoria Reynolds, glaciologist, climate researcher, the most technically accomplished climber on the team. The pressure is dropping fast. Storm forecast is moving up by at least 3 hours. James didn't slow his pace. We've got a 2-hour window, Victoria. We didn't come this far to turn back now. The storm came in 40 minutes faster than anyone predicted. One moment, the sky was clear. The next, the mountain disappeared inside a whiteout so total that the person 2 feet in front of you became a ghost. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in the time it took them to clip back onto the fixed lines. The wind went from strong to violent to something beyond language. A force that didn't push so much as erase, scrubbing away visibility, sound, direction, everything that makes a human being feel oriented in the world. They moved in a line, each clipped to the rope, heads down, pushing toward the ridge that would take them back below the worst of the weather. That was when Daniel stopped. "Hold up. Keep moving," James shouted over the wind. "Something's wrong." Daniel stood very still, in the way that experienced people stand still when they're processing something their conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. "Listen." Victoria listened. Under the roar of the wind, beneath the sound of their own gasping breath, something rhythmic, breathing, not human breathing. They kept moving. The attack on Robert happened so fast that none of them saw it clearly. One moment he was there, his headlamp visible 2 meters back, his hand gripping the rope.
I'm slipping!
The next moment, the rope snapped taut and then went slack. And when Victoria spun her headlamp around, there was nothing behind her but empty storm. His safety line had been cut, not frayed, not pulled loose from an anchor, cut in parallel lines spaced 3 inches apart. Daniel held the torn end of the rope up to his headlamp. He didn't say anything for a long moment, then very quietly, "These are claw marks." "That's impossible," James said. The denial was instant, reflexive. There are no predators at this altitude. Victoria had already found the blood trail, dark spots in the snow, leading away from the fixed line and into the storm. Maybe 30 meters away came a sound that was not the wind, a sound that was low and wet. "Run," Daniel said, not panicked, not shouting, just certain. And somehow found Camp 4. 4 battered tents, half buried in snow, the only human structure for 1,000 meters in any direction. They got inside. For a few minutes, the nylon walls of the tent felt like safety. Then they heard the footfalls, heavy, deliberate, circling the tent in a wide, patient arc. Whatever was out there wasn't rushing. It wasn't frantic. It was hunting, methodically, intelligently. The first strike came through the tent wall without warning. A massive concussive impact that split the nylon open and raked 4 parallel cuts through the fabric inches from Daniel's face. James fired an emergency flare through the tear. They had 2 more flares, 3 ice axes, 60 meters of rope, against something that had just cut through 9mm climbing rope like it was thread. 200 meters east. If we can reach them, it'll run us down in the open, Daniel said. Not if someone draws it away first. The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough for James to understand what she was saying and what it would cost. "My call to summit," he said quietly. "My decision. I'll do it." Nobody argued. There wasn't time. James Galloway stepped out of the tent into the blizzard with 1 flare and 30 minutes of oxygen, shouting into the dark, running in the opposite direction, drawing the thing's attention away from the 2 people scrambling east through the snow toward the rope anchor. They heard his voice for almost 2 minutes. Then they didn't. Victoria and Daniel reached the anchor. They clipped in. They began to descend. The beast, because that was the only word left for it now, the only category that fit, found them anyway. It came down the ice face above them, using its claws like crampons, descending vertical ice in the dark. Victoria thought she knew about what was possible. She watched it coming from 30 meters up, a massive pale shape against the black, moving with impossible certainty. Daniel caught her when her rope snapped. He pulled her onto a ledge barely wide enough for 2 people and shoved her into a crack in the ice wall, just as the beast's paw swept across the ledge. The paw reached in after them, extended further. The tips of the claws caught the fabric of Daniel's jacket. Daniel turned to her in the dark. His voice was the quietest she had ever heard a human voice be. "There's another exit. Behind you, 10 meters back. Crawl through." "We both go," she whispered. "Not enough time. Tell Sarah I made it count." He was out of the crevasse before she could stop him, shouting, drawing the thing back out onto the ledge, giving her exactly the 30 seconds she needed to crawl through the ice tunnel and emerge on the other side alone, into the storm, into the dark, into the rest of her life. She heard him fighting. She made herself keep crawling. Victoria Reynolds descended through the rest of that night alone. She fell into a crevasse and found an ice cave at the bottom, a vast blue cathedral of frozen silence, beautiful the way terrible things sometimes are, lit by her headlamp into a gallery of pale blues and deep shadows. She found, in that cave, the evidence of decades. Frozen bodies from expeditions going back 30 years, all bearing the same marks, all brought to the same place. She understood then that she was inside its den, that she had walked into the one place on the mountain she should never have gone. She climbed out through a vertical shaft by hand, ice axe by ice axe, 40 feet of bare frozen rock in the dark, with the beast circling below her, and she emerged onto the slope above Camp 2, just as the sky began to lighten. A rescue team was already there. They pulled her inside, They held her while she shook. They fired flares into the dark when the glowing eyes appeared at the edge of camp. 6 hours later, a helicopter broke through the weather window and took her down. She sat in the back and watched the mountain recede through the window. At the very last moment, before it disappeared into cloud, she saw it. A pale shape on the high ridge, impossibly large, impossibly still, watching the helicopter go, watching her leave. It didn't pursue. It didn't rush to the edge. It simply watched. And in that watching, there was something that she spent the next 3 months trying to find a word for. The official report called it a tragic accident, equipment failure in extreme weather conditions. 3 climbers lost, 1 survivor displaying symptoms consistent with severe altitude-induced psychosis. And she told the truth anyway every single time. Because James and Daniel and Robert deserve to have someone tell the truth about what happened to them. Some mountains should never be climbed, but they always are.